Hello. Right, I think we're back. So, welcome back to AATV Live. A couple of teething troubles. It's been a while. In fact, the last one I did of these was in January with my guest tonight. So, just a couple of caveats. As usual, it's a live show. We're in the hands of the internet gods. I've got no idea what's going to happen. I'm out in the garden room. We have got a new internet, like hardwired interconnection out here. Hey, you can hear me now. Thanks, guys. Must have pressed the wrong button somewhere. So yeah, we're in the hands of the gods, internet gods. We don't know what's going on. My guest is like in deepest, darkest countryside somewhere, and his internet is powered by a potato. So hopefully he'll be all good. So we're going to talk all about making airsoft better. And two grumpy old men's, actually I don't know how old Dan is. I'm 45 next week. Two grumpy old men's opinions on how to make airsoft better for everyone, really. Players, gamers, ourselves, organisers, everything. So let's say hello to Dan. Hello,
Sounds
mate.
gone.
How are you? Yeah,
Oh
gone
yeah,
again.
I can hear you now. Yeah, very
Yeah,
good, thanks.
excellent. So, Dan, whilst we're kind of waiting for everyone to join us, let's ask the standard AATV question, which is what's in your cup?
Well, tonight I decided the last time I didn't drink at all, but I've got a Peroni at the moment.
Oh, nice.
I'm not going to go fully fledged into whiskey territory on a Thursday, but
I've largely stopped drinking since I used to live stream. I had a bit of a health scare in the summer. So I'm not. It's not that I don't drink, but there's definitely less drinking going on. Um, so yeah. So I have a actually Tesco Shandy. Would you believe it? I feel almost embarrassed, but it's actually not too bad. It's almost better. I've been trying a lot of like kind of posh, no low alcohol beers, and they're all not brilliant actually. So that seems to be a fairly
yeah, I'm not a fan of low alcohol lager. I'd much rather drink, like a lemonade or a shandy or something.
yeah. So this and it's only got like 10 calories in. God, I sound like. But then I've lost 3 stone since I last did a live show, so things are going quite well.
I think I know where they've gone.
There's a few people moaning about that. I like stay away from me.
Yeah.
So Dan, well, again, so let's. I know obviously there'll be some of your blog readers over here who know you quite well, but for some of my viewers they won't. So do you want to briefly introduce yourself and what you do in airsoft?
So I'm Dan. I'm 37 years old. I live in the southwest of the UK. I'm married, so um, yeah, I don't get to spend a lot of time or money doing what I want. But she can probably hear me actually. I better be careful. But yeah, I've been playing airsoft now for since the late 90s, so
Okay.
quite a long time. Um,
Yeah.
but about four and a half years ago, I decided to start a blog up, and it was actually the recommendation of a couple of good friends of mine, one of whom doesn't actually do any blogs anymore, and the other one who is on a bit of a semi-retirement at the moment. And yeah, I wrote my own blog, and it's all gone from there.
So what sort of stuff do you cover in your blog? What's your
I
stick?
try and cover a little bit of everything. I don't sort of specialize in one area. So I've done everything from sort of loadout breakdowns of TV and movies. SEAL Team, actually, one of my most popular blog pieces, and the one that I would love to go back and rechange, is actually one on SEAL Team loadouts from the CBS show.
Yeah.
But I also do reviews on replicas, gear, and I do discussion pieces where I basically just get to rant about what I feel is either right or wrong with the airsoft community.
I must probably find that quite cathartic. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and sometimes it's nice because I do get the occasional person that disagrees, and instead of just being a troll, I try and engage them in a conversation, work out what their angle is, because I'm always open to the fact that I might be wrong. Um,
It's quite a rare
After a
talent.
lot of persuading, yeah, I try and see things from the outside. So my wife wouldn't agree with me; she always thinks I'm wrong. But I I try and see both sides of the argument, even if I'm quite adamant one side is right.
Cool. Okay. So as we said at the intro, if you guys could hear me, we're going to talk about making airsoft better. It's quite a broad topic. We'll try and be reasonably brief, as I'm aware everyone's got stuff to do. But I've had various kind of slightly ranty chats with Dan over the last year or so. We just message each other, this is happening, make it better. So we thought we'd get together and have a bit of a chat about it, really. So I think we should probably start off with our own background in Airsoft. So where did we start? How long have we been playing? And what sort of games do we now do? So do you want to lead us off there, Dan?
Yeah, so I started playing Airsoft with spring guns in the confines of a mate's farm. So uh, it was a little bit out there. It got a little bit silly because we were using sunglasses for eye pro, and yeah, my mate decided that it'd be great fun to bring an air rifle, and he actually shot me in the foot. And yeah, I decided to sort of pause it for a while then. Even though up until then I'd outgunned everybody, I was the only person to have a gas blowback pistol. Everybody else had shitty little springers. But yeah, when he brought the air rifle on, it was a bit of an arms race, so I had to kind of stop doing that. But proper airsoft, I actually heard about proper airsoft through a friend of mine in cadets, and we went to a game. I can't even remember where it was. It was somewhere in Exeter. It wasn't a site that's open anymore. And when I left school, I actually moved up north to Northampton, and that is north for me. I know it's south for 50% of the country, but yeah, I moved up there, and there was a site again so long ago, and to be honest, I spent most of my time socialising and partying. So um, I, it had one of those stupid airsoft names, like Combat something Airsoft, but it was between Northampton and Milton Keynes. And yeah, I played there for a couple of years, and then when I moved back down south, I used to play at 0-1.
Okay, yeah. So for those that don't know me, I'm Tom. I'm 45. I run a YouTube channel, which some people seem to like, and occasionally do live streams. I started playing in, I can't quite work it out, 2000, 2001 with Games Workshop when I first moved to Nottingham and at their headquarters in Lenton. And we had a kind of sports and social works team. And they managed to convince Games Workshop that it was a really good idea to basically pay for us to go and tit about on an airsoft field every so often, which was, I don't know, actually worked quite well with interdepartmental bonding and getting to know people and all that sort of stuff. And that was at the old Phoenix Woodland up at Junction near Mansfield, and which was quite traditional in kind of airsoft terms. We then started, and how I helped set up. Wasn't one of the directors or owners. The first and only site in Matlock, in Warstone Woods, very sadly missed. And I kind of been playing. I had a bit of a hiatus where I went off and did some sports, and I came back in about 2014 and started playing again with some guys from work, and I've carried on. And when I left work, I started writing for Airsoft Action magazine, and we started the YouTube channel, and then I took the YouTube channel off separately. These days, I mainly do gunman events, which I'm sure we'll get onto in a bit later. So what does your gaming look like kind of now, Dan? What do you do?
So I seem to flip between Sterling games and local games, whereas I haven't done a Sterling game for obviously over 2 years now. So as much as some people might think of me as being in the milsim community, can't really say that at the moment because I've not played a milsim or a theme game for such a long time. I love CQB, but again, there's not a massive opportunity for that down in the southwest. There's only a couple of sites, one of which I can't actually go to anymore, but we'll talk about that in a bit as well. And the other site is an hour and a half drive. It's up in Chippenham, which again for me I wouldn't really class as the southwest. It's quite a drive up. So yeah, I tend to play a lot of woodland games at my local site, Spartan, which is near Bristol Airport. But I am looking next year. Obviously, with the last 2 years that we've had, everything's been a little bit crazy. But I'm looking to get back into the more sort of theme game, weekend event game.
Right. So we've kind of talked about this about on and off. So what are we really looking for in a game? So what attracts you? What gets you going? What gets your juices flowing when you see a post up on on Facebook? What draws you in?
It's usually not a Facebook post that
Okay.
gets me drawn in. It's usually either I've been seeking that type of game for a long time and I've been told about it from somebody that I know, and when you've played airsoft for a number of years, you tend to know quite a few people from different areas, and you probably know what it's like. You get people going, "Oh, you going to this or you going to that, or have you seen this new event company you've started up?" And it kind of spirals from there. So um, yeah, the cat's here already. Great. But yeah, I'll be honest, there's only so many things that you can put on Facebook about an event. So it's the location generally
Right.
that piques
Okay.
my interest. There's a couple of places, for example, that if I ever saw them redo another event there, I'm going to get rid of you for a moment because you're a nightmare. That I'd go there at the drop of a hat. I'd make time to go there because
Yeah.
even if the organisation was shit, I know I'd have a good game.
Okay. Um, I tend to. So what do I do? So I look for themes. So I like, as you know, I'm sure my viewers will know, I like 80s, 90s, 2000s retro. I've got some modern kit, and I do the odd modern game, but I really like older stuff. I like stuff with a really heavy theme, um, and elements of role play. But I get that that's totally not for everyone. I have done, and I do a fair bit of crewing at some of Gunman's games, which is one of my kind of annoying various players is one of my favourite things in the world. So to a large extent, not actually firing an airsoft gun is what I look for in an airsoft event, which is somewhat contradictory sometimes. Cool. Okay, so we had a bit. It's one of the things I think I wanted to talk about. We had a brief chat in the kind of pre-show and decided to shut up before we talked ourselves out. Was about game rules and how they affect the way we all play, and how has that changed over the years, or have you seen a perception in the way games and even just, and if we're just assuming our normal walk on skirmish game, how those have changed over the last few years? Have you noticed
So
any?
yeah, I haven't noticed any changes as such. I mean, the biggest change in rules generally is the FPS limits, and that's come about because of the wide degree of things that people can do now. I mean, back when I first started playing, everybody was using Tokyo Marui because that's basically all there was. So you took a stock Tokyo Marui because there weren't upgrades. Certainly, where with anywhere that I was playing, people might have had access to upgrades, but not as far as I'm aware, or not as far as I can remember. So everybody was firing around 310, 320, and the site limits were 328 FPS.
Yeah.
And then you had your Chinese stuff come in, like Classic Army were probably the biggest one that I can remember coming in quite early, and then GMP. And they generally shot hot out of the box. And the limitation of teching back then was that somebody would go into the gearbox, get a pair of snips, and they'd snip the spring and put it back together, and then they'd re-chrono it, and that was it. And
Yeah.
people were actually quite good at doing that. It was a bit of a witchcraft, but that was the limitation of the rules. But what I see more than the rules changing is people looking for ways around the rules, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we've got an issue with an airsoft is everybody's looking for that grey area. They should be potentially looking to stay within the spirit of the game and not
Yeah.
going, what can I get out of this?
Do you have an idea why that might be?
Yeah, I've got my own theory, and I'm sure that you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. I think that the biggest issue that we've got within Airsoft nowadays is the perception for new players coming in when they see YouTubers, Airsoft gameplay YouTubers, who play a particular way that they feel that they have to play in
Yeah.
order to get the views and to get the recognition, to get their 15 minutes on Lad Bible. Um, and anybody who sees that when they come in, they have that perception of what airsoft should be, and it's nothing like that. And I think that causes a lot of misguided players to either break the rules, bend the rules, or give up.
Yeah, because getting footage, and I've done a very limited amount of it, is really difficult. And you have to work and work and work and work at it, and then you have to edit it into a meaningful
Yeah,
secrets.
yeah.
And
I've done the same. I did airsoft videos years and years ago, and to be honest, they were dire. In fact, I've erased them all off my channel. So if anybody stalks my ATRG YouTube account, they'll see nothing because it's not watchable. So there is a massive amount of skill to it, and I do respect them for that. But what I don't like is the way that they're portraying the game.
yeah, yeah, and we don't want to be too negative on this stream, but I think there is a concern that they're artificially raising the expectations for people in airsoft, and they are affecting the way people play because they try and emulate, whether they're trying to filming themselves or not. They are trying to emulate that footage. It's just natural, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, they are.
It's going to happen. If you watch it, that's what you're going to do. You're going to get your thing, and you're going to go and try and do what you've just seen on screen, not knowing that was actually he went through that door, down that corridor 20 times, and is using lots of cuts to get it. But that's okay. We used to, so when I started, respawning wasn't really a thing. So you either shot and out, or you were shot and medicked and out, and then you went and spent, to be honest, a fairly boring 20 minutes sitting there chatting with your mates, having a can of Coke or whatever. And I think that's kind of affected things. So I hesitate to say that respawns are a bad thing because it keeps people engaged and keeps people playing, and you don't sit on your ass getting cold for 20 minutes. But it definitely does affect the way people approach a game. What do you think?
Yeah. So again, I think, and I've been on both sides of this. Especially recently, I played a game at Spartan CQB, where I knew that no matter what happened, I could literally run back 30 feet into the room where the marshal was and respawn. So I had zero fear in storming down a corridor, which kind of made it unfair because every time I stormed down that corridor, I knew that if I hit one person and got back out, that I would be able to respawn faster than they would, and eventually we would win the fight.
Yeah.
And it kind of turns it from being how I want to play into how to win. And anybody who plays airsoft with me probably knows I'm really not fussed about who wins, or generally most objectives, certainly the rubbish objectives that you get on your average walk on. I've just come here to fucking shoot people and to get shot at and to have fun.
Yeah.
I don't care about, oh, you've got to turn that lever. If that's the objective and that's where the enemy's going to be, brilliant. That's fine. That gives me something to work around. But yeah, it what tends to happen is that people look at the objective and you can play outside of what I feel is the spirit of airsoft in order to achieve it. So you can get hit, you can go back once you're alive, obviously, because you can't talk when you're dead. But the knowledge doesn't just disappear.
No, you know where
So
that guy is around that corner.
yeah, exactly. So that guy in the ghillie suit, or that guy who's done the awesome flank and he shot three of you in the back, as soon as you're back in the game, he's gone. He's not a threat anymore because the element of surprise has completely disappeared. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we could do, or site owners could do, in order to change the way that the game is. Sorry, I'm going to have to keep hold of him, otherwise he's going to go nuts.
I'm sure the stream's not going to mind seeing
No,
a
probably not.
pussycat. I'm sure they're probably extremely delighted.
So, yeah, I think that's probably key to, certainly with Sunday walk-on games, in changing the way that the game moves.
Yeah.
In making it so that you care more about staying alive than you do about shooting people.
And I totally understand that is not for everyone. It's like I'm not saying every game needs to be shot and out or shot medic out or some mechanic. I totally understand that that's for a lot of people, certainly newer players. They want trigger time and they want engagement and they want stuff like that. Whereas for me, I'm quite happy spending 2 hours creeping on my knees through a bush to get a flank shot and then get one person. And I'm quite happy. But that's it's just a totally different way of playing. And then something I think I see a lot of frustration from, let's just call them milsimmers for shorthand. I see a lot of frustration from milsimmers at people playing that way. And sometimes I'm a bit less than sympathetic because you're on a walk-on site, you know what the games are, you know what the rules are, and trying to force your way of playing onto other. I think it's another way of making airsoft better. Is stop trying to force your way of playing onto other people, perhaps, to get them to comply with your wishes when the game rules don't actually say that at all. And that can go both way around. You can have people doing a fast respawn. Let's just call it speed soft again for shorthand, even though that whole speed soft versus milsim thing. It's just two ways of playing, and they don't necessarily work on the same field at the same time. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
So yeah, I, I I've seen it a lot more in CQB than I have in woodland games, where you do tend to get two very very different types of play. You get the methodical room clearers, and then you get the guy with the high capper with a M4 mag stuck on the bottom and a dye I4 mask and some stupid woolly hat, and he'll run into the room. And to be honest, when you think logically, the guy who's just running around with a pistol is going to be faster and more efficient generally, as long as he can shoot straight. In a one-on-one, he's going to clear more rooms more quickly, and he's going to be a faster, harder target to shoot
Yep.
than the guy who's fully decked out with a helmet, plate carrier. Um, he's struggling to maneuver his weapon around because he's got it slung with a 2-point sling, and just everything's a little bit more difficult because we're emulating something that isn't really necessary, which is, it gets onto a whole other conversation about whether or not plate carriers are even a real, something that you really need in airsoft, because all they do is slow you down and bulk you out. They're brilliant for impressions and they're brilliant for carrying a lot of stuff on you, but it does mean that sometimes we do end up carrying stuff that we don't really need. But it's one of those divides. You've got one side that goes ultra minimal and the other side that goes, I want everything that I can on me. And then when you put them both in a game, it's going to cause a little bit of friction, and it does. It's bad enough when you look at gas blowbacks versus PTWs versus TM recoils versus 58 quid simers. If we argue about our guns, we're going to argue about the whole methodology that we use for clearing rooms and for playing the game.
Yeah, let's touch on, since you've brought it up, let's touch on guns, airsoft guns, YouTube, airsoft guns, airsoft replicas, because they've changed again in the last, since I've been playing a lot, as you touched on it earlier. Then
Yeah,
we all started playing with plastic Maruis doing 270, 280 FPS or about 0.7 joules, I think. And now we're looking at, and firing 10 BBs a second and having a trigger time of about 6 gigayears before you pull the trigger and the BB actually leaving the barrel. And now we've got a plethora of highly tuned, whether it's gas blowback, HPA, AEGs, the guns are better, they're more accurate, they're faster
they are.
firing,
Yeah,
they have better range. There's certainly the rate of fire has gone up probably 3 times in the last 20 years, and that affects things and the availability of drum mags, box mags, and everything else. How do you see that as affecting what's happened on the field?
yeah. Again, it has, and manufacturers are steering towards different audiences. So you will find that you've got GBLS, you've got Sistema, you've got Marui, you've got other what I would call high-end companies who are looking one direction towards people who want absolute realism, and then you have companies such as, I mean, Specna's sort of middle ground because they do have some, realistic looking replicas. But you've got G&G, for example, who have a replica that isn't even a replica. It's dedicated just for, this is the bare minimum that we could do to make it function as an airsoft replica, and everything else is kept from it. So
Yep.
yeah, it certainly, yeah. I mean, things like the Firehawk, for example, when they first came out, I was like, Jesus Christ, who would want one of those? It looks like nothing realistic, but funnily enough, it kind of does. There's a lot of pistol caliber carbines that look like it now, but it's just something that I could never see myself buying.
No.
But they're everywhere. They're literally everywhere.
I still the rest.
Um,
Yeah, you see, they're fast, they're snappy, they're light, they're
yeah,
maneuverable. All the stuff you kind of touched on earlier, they're like that, and you can just buy them.
I think when it comes to how they've influenced the gameplay, I think certainly when I used to play, I think I only had one high cap that came with the gun, and I had a couple of real caps, which is something that most people don't even know about anymore. You certainly can't get them, and that was it. I didn't have loads and loads of magazines. And nowadays, people have got, I see people go into a game and they've got a dozen high caps, and they're there in the safe zone, literally, with their Lonex cord mags, literally, zipping them up and getting them all ready. And they're going out with more ammunition than I would use in a month for one
Yeah.
game. And I think that that changes it. When you've got somebody who doesn't have any inspiration to go, right, I've got 6 30 round mags and I've got to make them count and I've got to make them last for a whole game. and I've got to use them effectively and pick my shots. Running up against somebody who's got 6,000 rounds and they're just hosing down whatever they can see from behind a tree. It's a mentality thing, and I think that is one of the core reasons why airsoft is on a downward slope, because people don't want to pick their shots.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into one of the things we would probably like, or several things we would like to do to make airsoft better, because it sounds like we're kind of talking around it. So one of those is magazine capacity.
Yes, yeah, absolutely agree.
So I very rarely have been at a game. I don't think I've ever been at a game which has had limited ammunition or has restricted what magazines you can carry, and found it made the game worse.
No, it's never been something that I've gone, oh, I wish I could carry more ammunition, or I wish, I don't think 300 rounds is enough, because it's not like you're the only one that's penalised. Everybody is. Everybody's got that same consideration. So you make your shots count, and you employ things like support weapons
Yep.
A lot more effectively. Because they're limited as well. Usually, if you've got ammunition limits, generally, not so much nowadays. I've noticed that there's less of a willingness for people to be told you can't take your sniper rifle, you can't take your support weapon. But back in the day, you used to be told, right, you've got 2 support guns per team, you've got 1 sniper per team, and that's it. And it didn't always work, because airsofters are airsofters, but you tend to find that people would pick their shots better.
Yep. No, and I totally agree. So I do a lot of gunmen's games, and their film sim rule set for a rifleman is 300 BBs, and real cap limits, so 30 in a Stanag. You can, all your BBs are loaded. You can have loose, but you have to load them at a command point or at your HQ. And for me, it works really well. The problem is, again, as we're coming back to, is where if other people have a 6,000 round box mag, you're going to be in real trouble. And on a Firehawk that's this big,
Yeah,
you can't, because there's a minigun out there effectively. But in general, it's a really simple thing to do. Again, I can see why people don't want to do that. But for me, it's always been a better choice. And also, if you want to go and play with gas blowbacks later, or you want to play with a gun which does have restricted ammunition, you can try, and anyone can do it. You can put 34 in a normal AAG mag, and just the last 4 don't fire, and you still have a real capacity magazine. You don't need to buy a real cap, as long as you're fairly sensible with your thumb loader.
When I first got my MWS, I actually changed all of the mag capacities on my next gen recoil shock stuff to 30 rounds, so that it gave me more of an opportunity to practice. Even if I wasn't using the gas blowback gun, I wasn't changing the way that I played, because I always knew that I didn't have that much ammunition to play around with. And that seemed to work quite well. I certainly think that real caps works very, very well. Or the other main consideration that I've seen that's been used very, very well is no full auto.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen semi-auto games. In fact, there was a semi-private. Basically it was a regulars game day at Spartan Airsoft. It was early last year. Andy from Tac Belts organised it, and everybody there knew each other. The marshals basically didn't have to do anything all day. All they had to do was literally sit there and tell us, how many minutes it was until the end of the game. And we all agreed at the start. I don't even know whose idea it was, but somebody said, why don't we just play semi-auto all day? And we did, and it's probably the best game with so many tactical bits that I can remember. Flanks that we made, and really being able to hammer down and assault an objective without knowing that there was just literally a hail of BBs coming our way. You could run from cover to cover, and it was, 50-50 skill and luck whether or not you got killed.
Yeah, and you have to wait. And
Yeah.
you can wait for reloads as well, which is a real thing. If someone's shooting at you and they're out, you've got some time to reload. The other thing I think it does really well with semi-auto is you can have automatic classes, but you just limit them. So your support guns then go on to automatic, and they might have give them a bigger capacity. But then your support gun becomes what it is. It's the support gun. It's the base of fire.
Yeah.
And the gate and the whatever you have, a section or a squad or a bunch of guys bimbling about, have to work around that support gun, which makes for interesting and tactical gameplay anyway, because that can be covering your advance as you're doing stuff. So I think that kind of stuff works really, really well. Where are you with rate of fire at the moment?
So I'm not. It's a tricky one because everybody's seen the videos of like 70 rounds per second on HPA and stuff like that. I don't really think that you can stop rate of fire. What I'd like to see is more suitable burst limits where I've seen players go, oh well, our site limits to a 3 second burst, and I'm like, 3 seconds is a long time. It, 3 seconds. If somebody shot me continuously for 3 seconds, I'm not sure I could keep my temper. Um, it should be 3 to 5 round bursts or something like that, or something that's a bit more measurable.
Yeah,
But in terms of rate of fire, it's something that a lot of people will say, oh, I need the high rate of fire because I use it for trigger response. Yeah, on certain builds you kind of need to. On some you don't. So with certain MOSFETs, you can actually limit the rate of fire whilst having precocking. So your actual trigger response is very, very good, but your rate of fire is capped at say 10 or 15 rounds a second.
yeah,
But I don't think that it's something that is available to everybody yet. So in order to get a good trigger response, I still think that some people are kind of pinned into having a high rate of fire.
yeah. If you're going for a mechanical gearbox, yeah, you don't really have much choice. I've got my TN Mark 18's got a Titan in it, and
Yeah,
then I've got sent a Warhead. So, but that was straight away. We're talking 300, 400 pounds worth of electronics.
yeah, it's a lot of money. I mean,
It's a
for
lot. It's ridiculous.
grown men like us, we can sometimes justify it. And I've got the same. I've got a TM Mark 18 with a Titan in it, and you can do all the fancy things that you can with a fully tricked out TM. But there is also, again, speaking about seeing things from other people's point of view, I can see that some people,
Mm.
when I first got back into Airsoft, because I left in 2007 and I got back into it in 2012, I spent 120 quid on a Classic Army M6, which is a short barreled M4 made by LWRC, and it was about as much as I could afford. 120 quid, and that's it. I couldn't afford anything else, and I bought myself some cheap Classic Army metal mid caps and an Arctis chest rig,
Yeah,
and that was it. That was my loadout. A pair of walking boots, a pair of work gloves, and yeah, nothing else.
yeah. And I get it. I mean, we already talked about going to. I mean, one way of dealing with rate of fire is restricting magazine size because then they're out of BBs fast anyway.
Yeah,
But then that does add a cost because you can see why people buy one drum mag. It's one cost. It's done. I've got all my BBs in it sorted. If you're buying, I know magazines aren't, but by the time you bought 10 real caps or 10 mid caps and downloaded them, there's a cost associated with that straight away, and then you have to
yes,
carry, and then you have to carry them. So then you almost go back to your point right at the beginning where you're slowed down again because you've got
yeah.
some you're gonna have to wear something else to carry all of those magazines in.
So in a strict sense of things, it's not a very efficient way of playing, but
No,
it's how I choose to play. So yeah, I don't own a single high cap. Any that come with any guns that I've ever owned, I've given them away. Literally, I've given them away. I've got no interest in them whatsoever. They're virtually worthless. They mean nothing to me. So any newbie that I've seen in the safe zone who's got a compatible gun, chuck them at them. Here you go, mate.
that's really
Here's an M4 mag because I don't
that's
want it.
yeah, that's a really nice idea. I should do that.
Well, I'm not that nice anymore. I sell them.
I've got a whole cupboard full of them, so I probably should do something with them. Okay, right. So we kind of I think technology has driven the way people play, as have game rules to an extent. What about how is that? One of the things I've got down here is talk about kind of almost the common issues that plague airsoft, and how do we sort that out? So obviously the non-hit taking thing.
Yeah,
It's always happened. I don't know if there's something we can do to change that. And you've also made a note about kind of a lack of tactical awareness and a
yeah.
phrase
So
playing like checkers, not chess. So do you want to go into that a
yeah,
little bit?
so non-hit taking is something that I think is always going to plague airsoft, and that's always going to be down to personal self-respect and good marshalling. And even good marshalling can't always stop it. But when it comes to tactical awareness, I'm not talking about being an ex-SEAL or an ex-Royal Marine Commander. I'm talking about having a general idea of how to make yourself better at airsoft. So not standing around talking to each other, when there's potentially people sneaking up on you, and understanding terrain, for example, knowing that if I go this way in the wide open field, if I get shot at, I've got nowhere to go. And when I look at a piece of cover or an objective, I can go, that's probably where they'll be. And I think a lot of airsofters nowadays seem to have forgotten the basics.
Yeah.
So they don't look at an objective, they don't look at a site or a building and go, there's 4 doorways, this is how we need to go through it, or if I was in there, where would I be? And
Yeah.
they kind of disregard that and they just storm in there. And you see even the most diehard of milsimmers who have got 2.5 grand guns, 4 grand on their body, and 10 grand's worth of nods. They're doing stupid things like walking in the middle of the road,
Yeah.
walking bunched up with 3 or 4 people next to each other. And you do that, and anybody who plays Op4, particularly Op4, is going to make light work of you, really light work. And they do it almost every Sterling game.
Yeah, I've seen it a bit with. It's another kind of conversation, but the nods thing's interesting. I've seen a few players with nods that seem to think because they can see, no one can see them.
Yeah,
it's a whole nother conversation to have at some point. It's about technology. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's maybe a bit more recon by fire now because people have got more firepower than they used to. Maybe just because of potentially it goes back to that whole respawn thing because they can respawn more. There's less onus on using cover and concealment. Maybe they just don't know how to use cover and concealment. Maybe it's just not a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it might even be the way that we're introduced into airsoft and even introduced how to shooting. Because as a kid growing up, I used to shoot guns with my grandfather at Pistol Club, and I joined the cadets. So I learnt about, admittedly, it's cadets, so it's very basic fieldcraft and it's very basic principles of patrolling. But I still learnt that. Whereas nowadays, a lot of kids are learning how to storm a building by playing Call of Duty. So they're learning a completely different way of doing it. All they see is the M4. They don't see everything else. They don't see how to get to an objective. They don't see anything else. They literally, yeah. It's I think potentially it could be the fundamental sort of mindset of players coming into it and approaching it in a completely different way.
Yeah, and it's something we've got on our radar to do a video on with Gadge as part of our, we call it Mill Skills. It's a completely wanky title, but we couldn't think of anything better. But all the stuff we're doing is basically straight out of the Cadet's Handbook. So I was at a milsim a couple of weeks ago, and people were out patrolling in the woods. Nobody had local foliage or campaign on. Nobody. And some of them were not complaining, but mentioning that the Russian camo was better. And you're like, yeah, it was better. They also all had balaclavas on.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see their faces.
No.
It was you lot, all you can see is this big pale face. And it's one of those. It's just, and that's to me, and that's really basic. That's
yeah. I mean, that's sort of like all you need to do is look at YouTube videos on hunting or fieldcraft or patrolling skills or anything like that, and people go, it's a human outline. Break it up. You've got to break it up because it doesn't matter what color you're wearing. If you see that outline or you see the movement and the basic stuff like that, that's what's going to give you away way before whether or not you're wearing ranger green or foliage green or multicam or whatever. That's irrelevant to a big degree. Uniforms aren't really used for camouflage as much as they're used for identifying between forces and for cohesiveness within a military unit. They've got to have a uniform, so they have one that is relatively effective. But the effectiveness of being concealed is more to do with your own personal discipline.
Kenny's just made a point. I'll bring it up again. When you're on point and no one has any idea about the hand signals.
Yeah, so we would. I can't remember where it was, but somebody brought this up a couple of weeks ago. Was it on? It was on Facebook, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was Baz on Milsim News.
Yeah,
did a bit of a jokey post, but he had a point.
Yeah, definitely. And it's generally how you can separate. There's two sorts of people when you go to a game. There's the people who know the hand signals, and there's people who don't know hand signals. And you don't need to know many. There's literally like five that will get you through any game, and that's stop, get down, enemy friendly, and look where I'm looking, and that's it. Everything else you could add to. But if you don't know the basics for that, and they're almost in, yeah, they're almost instinctive, those hand signals.
Yeah,
But some people, they look at you like, what are you saying? And it's like,
magic.
the reason why I'm not telling you is because the enemy's like 30 feet away.
And then you're having to shout at people, at which point, yeah, sort where's that one? Yeah, all about the successes. Yeah, it's basics. And anyone that's done cadets or even spent a little bit of time watching any vaguely stuff on YouTube, it's quite easy to pick up. So yeah, I think basic fieldcraft. I see very little basic fieldcraft, and I think even at milsims, whatever a milsim is, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah,
Very few people that actually have any real fieldcraft. There are definitely some. There are some absolute ninjas that just disappear, slot
there's
everyone.
actually one guy at my local site called Chewy, and he runs a Vietnam loadout. He plays one of each side. He doesn't care which side it is. He's either ARVN or VC or an American GI. But when he goes in, every single time he plays, he cams himself fully. He goes out, he rips phones off, he shoves them into his hat, and he disappears. I don't see him for the rest of the day. Um, but he's a sneaky bastard, and he has a whale of a time. He has a brilliant time, but that's at a Sunday skirmish. That's not anything special. He just turns up every Sunday and he plays that game, and that's how he wants to play.
Yeah.
And he nails it. And then you get other people who have got, full on ghillie suits who they've bought off of certain well known YouTubers, and they don't add any kind of local cam at all or anything like that. They just go out and they think that it's going to turn them invisible, and they're running around with a Mark 23 thinking that it's some kind of ninja.
We have fun. Gadge and I have fun at our local site, hunting snipers. Put cam paint and ferns in our hats, and then go out hunting snipers.
Yeah.
So that's our thing. We've just decided that's what we like doing. So it's one of those. And generally we do quite well. So I think that's something certainly I can do. I know this channel has some reach, not masses, but it's certainly something we're trying to do. Is just trying to raise that fieldcraft game. Plus, it's something we can do. And we spoke about this a bit earlier, but something we can do without YouTube flagging us as well, because YouTube does not like.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Anything.
I mean, you don't even need to have. You can literally be going for a walk. I've quite often had it. I'm quite lucky. I live in a very rural area, and if I'm out for a walk, I don't want to have a chat with everybody that I bump into and say good afternoon. Sometimes I'll just disappear into the woods, and not in like a weird way or anything, but sometimes it's just nice to avoid people. Um, if I'm having a really relaxed day, I don't want to have your dog jumping up and try and hump my legs, so I'll just walk off the track 50 meters or so, and I'll just stay still, and I'll just sit there, and I'll be chilling, having a brew or whatever. And it's surprising how if you do follow the really basic stuff of just limiting your movement, limiting your noise, and all the basics, you can really disappear. And I think that certainly there could be a lot of education on sites. Um, I try not to sound like a know-it-all when I play, but I generally end up with 3 or 4 rentals tagging along with me and a few guys, and I'll be there going, guys, if we stay really quiet down, keep your heads down, don't shoot them until we know that they're in range and stuff like that, because that's one of the biggest differences between airsoft and real life is that the replicas that we use just don't have the range or the accuracy past realistically 50 meters. So
Yep.
you've really got to pick your shots, and I think that that's where a lot of people let themselves down. They literally go contact, and they just let rip with a 200 round burst, and you've not achieved anything. You've just basically created trench warfare. You're stuck. You can't move forward. You can't move around them. You can't choose the battle. It's already been chosen for you.
I think that's a really good point. Something I want to elaborate on just now. I think people better understanding the limits of their airsoft replica, what it can do, what it can hit, when they should shoot. And I was okay at this kind of stuff, but I've spent a lot of time on a range in the last 2 years testing stuff to the point where I'm pretty good now at knowing. I know my holdovers, I know my BBs, I know the range at which airsoft guns are effective, and 50 is pushing it for most of them, unless you're firing 200 round burst. But through a woodland, through brush, through trees, you're just not going to hit anyone. And I think it might be useful for something, and I'll use this as a segue to go on to our next topic, something for organisers and game days to have a measured range, even just a small section on their sites, so people have an idea about how far their guns can shoot. And then it might help with another thing, which is always cheat calling. Well, you generally, I've marshalled enough times to know that 95% of the time, you just haven't hit them.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there when we've been shot at, and the other guy's convinced that he's shooting at you, but you can see the rounds falling 10 feet short, but you're not going to tell them that they're falling 10 feet short. He's just going to angle up 5 degrees.
And you see them getting
But
more and more mad
yeah,
at you, and you're like,
yeah, it's like when you hit me, I'll call out, but you haven't hit me yet, and I've not hit you. So obviously, oh, hang on, maybe I'll angle myself up 5 degrees. But yeah, I think it's a lot of the aggro comes from that as well. It's people picking a fight that's slightly out of their own range,
yeah,
and they probably should have, maneuvered themselves. It's similar in a way. I was having a chat with my dad about photography. He's just spent a couple of grand on a camera. He's done what he always does. He's got really into it, but he's not thinking about what he needs to do. He's letting the equipment do it all for him. And I said, you just need to, instead of thinking that you need a better lens because it wasn't light enough, you need to move yourself out of the way of the sun because you're just
yeah.
taking photos in shadow. And it's the same with, it's a bit odd, but yeah, it's the same with airsoft. If you think that you're going to win the fight just by carrying on shooting and shooting and shooting, you're going to make the game worse. What you should be doing is going, where do I need to be in order to best hit that target?
Yeah. Where's my arcs of fire? There's a path. Where can I best dominate this ground? And all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. Weight. Most out the box airsoft guns are effective at 30, 40 meters and have a maximum range of 50 meters, and that is not as far as people think it is.
no, it's not. No, that measured range idea. That's something that actually Spartan do on their
Brilliant.
chrono range. They have segmented ranges for 20, 40, 60, and it's actually really good for ranging your gun in, dialing the hop in perfectly, but also it also lets the snipers on the day, or any, well, they don't do DMRs down in the southwest, but any snipers, they can go, right, your minimum engagement is 30 meters. Do you know how far away that is? Point to which barrel it is. And they can literally go, it's that one or it's that one. And they can educate people at the same time as to how far you can, how far away you have to be.
I've seen Justin do it at the jail a few times. He's taking his
Yeah,
snipers out, honestly, and he knows the site well. And he goes, "Okay, walk 20 meters," and invariably they don't walk 20 meters away.
no,
Like, well, it's that fence post there. Oh, okay, well, it's one of those things. So I think that might help. That might help people just understand, or just a general point, just understand your airsoft replica better and what it's actually capable of and what you can actually do with it. Unfortunately, places like Thurliston are quite rare airgun clubs that allow airsofters on, but I'm sure most sites could easily hang a target up at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 meters from a tree somewhere and just get players used to, as you said, what they do at Spartan, just get players used to shooting at stuff. I think that would really help.
yeah.
So we'll segue on to using that, as well as putting a range on their sites. What do you think organisers could do to make airsoft better?
I think they need to be a little bit braver and maybe not think that by limiting what you can do is going to affect their sales. Because I think that the majority of airsoft sites, and it's not all of them, I've got some friends and a lot of acquaintances who run and manage airsoft sites. I think that they need to potentially go, you know what, we're not going to do what everybody else does and just let everybody use everything. We're going to limit what you can do. We're going to, limit it to maybe mid caps only, or we're going to limit it to semi-auto only. And we're going to try a day, or we're going to try a couple of game days, or we're going to say that this day is going to be for that. And I know, again, Justin at the jail, he does things like that. He does spring and gas only
Yeah,
nights
yeah,
and specific games that allow people to play a certain way, and it adds something else onto the game. Whereas I think a lot of the traditional woodland Sunday skirmish places, they don't care. They don't care about the game at all. All they seem to care about is the money coming through the gate. And they feel that by saying, well, you can't have that because it's a fucking MP5 with a drum mag, they feel that that's going to limit the amount of people that they're going to be able to take money from. But it's actually the reverse. I think more people would actually be interested in playing there if the games were a little bit more structured and a little bit more organised.
Yeah, I mean, 46 Templars commented that won't a site kill themselves by limited mag count as they want you to buy BBs. And I think that's a fair point.
Yeah,
And
to a degree. But
that may be, as you said, it may be scaring people from doing that because they think
possibly,
they're going to get less on-site sales. It could be a reason holding people back to an extent.
yeah. Again, I mean, a lot of this I think comes from the paintball mentality, because a lot of airsoft sites were at one stage a paintball site, or still are, and their main source of money isn't the initial walk-on fee. It's the ammo, the pyro, and the food, and they make a lot more money off of that because the profit margin's a lot higher. But how many regular players do you know that buy their ammo on site? That's the key. The long-term players do not buy their ammo on site because it's fucking hideously expensive.
I
The
can
last
remember
time I
what I
bought,
yeah.
in fact,
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
sorry, the exception to the rule, actually, I'm a bit of a hypocrite. I buy most of my ammo from Spartan because they sell the only ammo that you can use on site. But the specific reason for that is that they are a bio-only site, and they ran tests, and this was the only bio ammo that they were, and the landlord was happy with them using.
Yeah.
But they don't overprice it. It's very, very, comparable to how. In fact, it's cheaper than you can buy it anywhere else.
What's Glenn said? It's easy to vary the type of games during a skirmish day. Pistol only, sniper focus play, limited to semi-auto. I think it's a good shout, and you could
Yeah.
if people are scared or reluctant to make sweeping changes, they could try a few little changes.
So the only time that I've seen this done is usually at the end of the day when 80% of the player base have gone home, and they go, right, pistol only game in the CQB area, or the building area, or those trees over there. But I think that potentially there are a few sites locally that have done this, and I've seen it being done with, for example, the jail, which isn't local by any means, where they have gone, we're going to include this within our calendar. We're going to have once a month, we're going to do a spring and gas only day, or we're going to do a themed game. They won't call it a milsim because everybody's terrified of using the word milsim, because everybody will have their own expectations of it, and it will end up on Facebook the day after with everybody bitching.
Yeah.
But you can measure people's expectations and still have a good day by doing things like single shot only, or by saying, right, you've only got 300 rounds. How you use it is up to you. Or once you're dead, and again, like you were saying about the early days, by going, there is no regen. It's a 30-minute game. If you get shot, you're dead. You go back to the regen and you wait there until the next game. Done.
I used to quite like it, but it was just me. I probably smoked at the time, so it was probably probably helped.
Yeah, yeah. But also, there's the social side of airsoft as well. So
Yeah.
instead of people taking too long to get ready between games, you can have your social when you're dead.
You also
And I
bomb up
think,
while you're there if you've got a bit of
yeah,
stuff with you. You're ready to go
yeah.
again. If you've taken some loose BBs and a speed loader out with you, you're ready. You're ready to go. You can turn your games around a lot quicker. Have you got any other suggestions for organisers? I mean, being a bit braver with their game types, I think, is quite key.
So the other thing would be, and this applies more to the sort of weekend games, the ones that have the rules in place that you think, oh yeah, brilliant, this is my type of game. They've got ammo limits, they've got rules of engagement, they've got uniform requirements. And the biggest thing that I see is them bending their own rules because somebody didn't bring that. Oh, I didn't realise I had to bring that. Or, they're on the NATO team, which is multicam, and the only waterproofs they've got are DPM surplus ones. It's like, well, you can't wear them in game. If you're getting wet, you'll have to stay in the fob. But they don't ever do it. So
Nothing
you end up
depresses.
with.
So nothing depresses me more when the tape comes out a battle sim or a mil sim.
Yeah, Fred
So, oh,
from
really?
Gilo
Please?
Crow, he's got a real sort of. Yeah, he hates that. The game that we went up to Alpha 55 a couple of months ago for, he was like, "Can everybody make sure they bring the right uniform because I don't want to wear tape?" And to be honest, I was there for just the social. I didn't care about that. But if I went to a proper themed game that had rules of engagement, ammo limits, and objectives, and a backstory and everything else, I wouldn't want to see tape. I wouldn't want to see two tones. I wouldn't want to see tape. I wouldn't want to see a fucking ARP9 or a Firehawk or something like that. I just want to see people, you know, being normal, or as normal as airsofters can be.
Well, when I started, we used to have two shirts. So we used to bring a deserty shirt and a greeny shirt with us because we didn't use tape. And certainly at First and Only in Matlock, we didn't use tape. We split people based on their uniforms, and then we also had a massive dressing up box, and it was just full of £3 shirts from Anchor. It really wasn't that stressful. And
I
if
think
people,
the biggest issue that you've got now with that is that people want to use their multicam black, or they want to use their Desert Tiger stripe, and they're not willing to change themselves for the benefit of the game. They're thinking more about their own enjoyment than everybody else's, which I kind of get, because when you go somewhere, if I go to an airsoft game, I've gone there and I've had to make sacrifices. I've had to choose to not do something else, like shooting, or go out with my wife, or stay in and play on my PC, or do whatever. But there is a degree of, if I could make everybody else's game better by changing the color of my top from brown to green, I'll do
yeah,
that. But it doesn't seem to be a common thing anymore. If somebody asked me to do it now, I'd be shocked.
yeah,
If somebody said, right, we're going to go tan versus green, I'd be like, well, yeah, I wish I'd known about that because I haven't got the stuff with me. But in the old days, like you said, it was quite normal, and certainly for weekend games with Sterling, for example,
yeah.
I will generally book on as Op 4, but twice I've gone as Task Force because the numbers have dropped, and Matt said, do you mind swapping over? And I've been like, no problem. I'll carry both sets of gear to a game like that just in case
Mm.
something needed to change. But if the expectation was there for everybody, I think most people would.
If I could do anything, I'd probably ban black kit, but that's
Yeah, I quite like multicam black. I shouldn't. It's forbidden love, but yeah, I don't hate it. But black kit in woodland is a little bit cringy.
hang on. I think I'm being phoned.
Yeah, it's not me.
All right, sort that out. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, black kit. I don't know, black kit. When I was a marshal, there was always problems with players in black kit. But
You know what? Actually, you got a point there, because every time I seem to have come up against somebody like a real bellend, he's always been wearing black.
it's one of Gadget's
So,
theories, and I tend to agree with him, to be honest.
well, it must be a mentality thing of people who want to go up to a site wearing all black, that they're also just complete assholes.
Kiwi says, "What about people doing police loadouts?" Well, if it's in context, then yeah.
Yeah, I've done police loadouts, and that was all in black. And to be honest, I was a bit of an
But
asshole, so it still works.
so let's finish off with our last topic, and we kind of already I think we've kind of touched on the biggest part of this, which is players and what they can do. And for me, it's about understanding you're part of something bigger than just your own desires.
Yeah,
And it's kind of as simple and as complicated as that statement is, really.
I think the biggest thing is that you should not only be thinking about your own enjoyment, but the enjoyment of everybody else. So again, this stretches into things like the grey area of rules. Think, okay, just because he's not said that I can't do that, is it within the spirit of the game? Is somebody going to get pissed off if I do it? And I think people just need to have a better appreciation of what everybody else is. You are the only thing in airsoft, and I've said this for a long time. The only thing that you've signed up to do on airsoft is you signed up for a day of being shot at. Everything else is
Yep.
optional. The only non-optional thing is that you will get shot at. Whether you want to shoot at somebody, that's a conscious decision that you make. Whether or not you want to walk around somebody and not shoot them, that's your choice. But the only thing that you can't control is that people will shoot at you, and you really got to start thinking about other people's enjoyment. And if everybody does it, and this is a bit of a hippie-ish thing, but if everybody thought that, and if everybody thought about everybody else's enjoyment, I think the game would be better. And I think that's why private games in particular work really, really well, because you are held accountable by your most trusted and cared about people, and you don't want to let them down. And I've always felt that, certainly with private games, I want the game to work really, really well, because everybody that I I get on with, my close group of friends, they all depend on me doing my part, and they depend on everybody else doing their part.
Boom. No, I totally agree. It's part of the reason I like crewing, because I like making sure other people have a good time. Plus, I like being annoying, but part of being annoying is in the game brief. And I think if more people, yeah, you're right, it's quite hippie-ish, but if more people played like that, it takes a lot of the problems away. It takes a lot of the aggression away. It takes a lot of the non-hit taken away, because you're more tuned into what's happening. That BB's coming at me, and I honestly think most non-hit taking either doesn't exist, or they didn't feel it, or they didn't hear it, or anything along those lines. Or they think it's a ricochet because they're in the moment. Oh, it's a ricochet. And if you can slow down, be a bit more aware of what's going on around you, and just be cool about it, and realise, okay, I might have been hit, I might not have been hit. There was a funny, really loud noise there, and I didn't feel anything. Well, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Someone's thrown a £7 pyro into a room, and you could probably escape. But you're like, well, that's £7 worth of stuff there. I'm going to make him really happy by getting blown up. It's really not.
There's nothing more frustrating than chasing a piece of pyro that you've thrown into a room, and everybody being there, and then them still shooting at you, and you're like, but I just killed you all. I'm literally following in pyro that has a 5 meter kill radius, and the room's 3.5 meters wide. There's nowhere for you to hide. Why are you still shooting at me? Oh no, I was behind the sofa. I was around the corner.
Yeah.
Piss off.
Or as well as if someone's on point going through a door, it's probably a nice idea to go with them and not laugh at them as they get hosed by 17 other players.
So yeah, that was something that I experienced multiple times. The last CQB game that I played, I'd literally be there willing everybody to come with me. I didn't care if I got shot, because I'd be the first person around the corner or through the doorway. But it's pointless me running up to the same point every time and getting shot if I haven't got 3-4 people behind me.
Yeah.
And it happened a couple of times where if I didn't have people following me, they'd be shooting me in the back. It was just endless disappointment that day. But I still had fun, because I kind of measured my expectations, and I was like, you know what? Instead of asking you to follow me, I'm just going to push you around the corner. And it was a lot more fun.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start wrapping up. Does anyone have any questions for Dan while he's here? We'll wait a couple of minutes before we turn everything off, and just make sure you get. So if anyone's got any questions or suggestions or ideas, we'll just have a bit of a quick Q&A before we finish the session. No, I think it's. So for me, I think our last point is, and yeah, we are being hippies about it, but I think that's the most important thing. And I think as you get a bit older as well, you start to accept that life isn't necessarily all about you. That's just being an old fella. And as you have more responsibilities, you also start to realise that as well. Even just having pets, you realise that you can't just bugger off and do your own thing. You've got to look after a pet, or you've got to. So yes, and it's the same adage. It's as you get more experience in life, you get a bit more aware of what's going on around you. And I don't blame anyone for acting in any way at all. It's just one of those life lessons that you start to go.
I think the one thing that I'd like to put out there for this live stream is that everybody has a part that they can play. You might only be a player at a site that you have no control over, but you can choose how you play, and it will influence people around you. Everything that we do does influence the people around us. You see a guy who's naturally happy and smiles and never has a bad word to say about each other, and you're generally a better person around them. Whereas, we've all got mates who bring out the worst in us, and if you try and be that best airsofter that you can be at every game that you go to, everybody around you will be that little bit better for it. And you can influence things. You can talk to your site owners and staff and marshals. You can go, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? Because trust me, if there's people watching this going, oh, that's brilliant, why aren't we doing that? I agree with you 100%. There are going to be people at your site that feel the same way. So you have a responsibility to make the game as good or as bad as you want to. They could turn around and say, no, we're not doing that. That's fine. But you also have an ability to go to another site.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been asked off topic, but are the live streams going to be a regular thing again? Probably not regular, but certainly a lot less irregular than they have been. So the last live stream I did was with Dan in January. So I hope to do them more regularly than this. I do find them very stressful, so I can't do them that often. I actually got quite ill last year doing too many. So but if there's a good guest or a good topic, and yeah, fine, we'll do them. But it's not going to be like a regular Thursday night or anything.
Every other day.
Yeah, just be. I can live stream the dogs. It'll probably be vastly more.
No, it would be. Yeah,
much
yeah.
more
I've
popular than
thought of
me.
setting my
Completely.
cat up an Instagram account. It'd probably make mine look stupid within a couple of days.
Gerard Airsoft says Rift Airsoft do a great job at reminding each team that they're there to look after the other team. Yeah, makes
Yeah,
all the difference.
yeah. And again, you're never there to hurt somebody. You do always get idiots who are going, "Oh yeah, shot him in the face" or whatever, and headshots are a whole other argument. But you shouldn't have an aim of shooting somebody to hurt them. You should just be trying to eliminate them from the game. Yeah.
Dan says, what event are you attending next to both of you?
I don't honestly know.
No.
There's a Christmas game at Spartan at the end of the year. I don't know what the date is, but I will definitely be going to that. It's a good social event. There's a lot of people who I've known for a long time at Spartan, so I'll generally play there. I do want to go to another CQB game at Spartan Airsoft, the other Spartan Airsoft in Chippenham. I've not played Airsoft CQB for maybe 2 years or so, and it was like a drug. Playing it made me want even more. So, and it's where things like my gas blowbacks come into their own. You're not hampered at all by the fact that you've got a 30 round mag, because it doesn't take 30 rounds to clear a room. You can literally move from room to room, changing mags, and by the time that you're out of ammunition, the game's over. So I definitely want to play another game there before the end of the year. Cool. As for actual events, I'm looking at next year's calendar. Probably not going to be going away anywhere until March, April.
Yeah, I probably won't be able to get away until March. Probably a gunman game, potentially a Sterling. I'm a lot fitter now, so I feel like I can actually do myself justice at a Sterling game and put some. I could always have gone, but I always wanted to go, and it's been a while since I've been because I just didn't feel like I could put enough effort in for myself to make myself happy. Rather than having a miserable experience and making everyone else miserable, like we've just talked about, I wanted to be able to go with a very positive attitude. Sir Kwanga, I really can't pronounce your second half of your name. Would you agree that toxicity on site is pretty much non-existent? It only really occurs online. I see very little toxic behaviour on site.
I see a lot less. It's usually little clicks that you tend to get a little bit of toxicity, and it comes out in the way that they play. Things like power playing, overkilling, non-hit taking. Just general sort of, not bad behavior, but just general sort of a non-willingness to play within the game sort of mindset. But you do see it if you know what to look out for. That it's definitely there depending on which site you go to, but it's not as common as online.
It'll be the guys in black.
Yeah, it's always the guys in black.
Oh.
Yeah,
there's a T-shirt in there somewhere. Just have a quick look. I think we're pretty much there. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone for turning up. I think this has been a record. We had over 70 at one point. Thank you. Brilliant. Love it. Thanks so much for turning up. Big thank you to Dan for coming on and letting me talk at him.
Oh, no, thanks for having me on. I haven't talked this much all day, to be honest. Nothing left for the wife.
Yeah. I've still got some thumbnails to do for some episodes, but I might have to go and have some food first. Coming up. So what's coming up? You got anything coming up on your blog you want to talk about, or any promo codes you want to promote?
Yeah, funnily enough, I wasn't sure whether or not you'd be okay with this.
Go for it.
But yeah, so Tactical Kit have a Black Friday sale. However, there is an early access Black Friday sale today. It ends at midnight. It's 10% off of anything on their site, plus free UK shipping. And you literally, and I'll type it in the comments now, it's the code that you enter at the checkout is Black Friday ATRG. Do not type in Black Friday Crow, because you'll get nothing off. Nice. But yeah, that's basically it for promos. There is also 10% off of Hollow Sun optics at Tactical Kit as well with ATRG 10. That runs until the end of the month. But if I was you, I'd be going for the Black Friday discount because you get free shipping as well.
That's really good across
Um,
across all of the site. That's really quite
yes, yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
So you could spend £2,000, you get 200 quid off and free shipping. You could spend 10 quid on a pair of gloves, mechanics gloves, and you would end up with, just paying 10 quid for a pair of gloves. That's it. So yeah, it's pretty good. It's not like a lot of the Black Friday sales where it was that price before and it will be that price at winter. Tactical kit don't usually have a lot of sales, certainly not site wide. I think the last one that they had was, you know what? I'm not even sure when the last one they had was. I think it was probably last year.
That's
But
anything to look for on the blog coming up?
yeah, so on the blog I have the. Sorry, I'm going to demonetize your live stream now. I have this to review, which is the Tokyo Marui Next Gen. You've also got one, so I'm actually looking forward to your review as well.
Yeah, I
And
need to actually play with it.
I played with it in CQB and it has changed my mind. I played with it in Woodland and I thought, well, it's all right, but it's not what I'm used to. Even a stock MWS kind of felt better. But I played CQB with it and it was very, very nice. I handed it across to a guy because he had a better angle than me and he was down to his pistol and I chucked it across the room at him, as you do when you forget how much something costs. And yeah, he shot down this hallway, and he didn't realise it was a recoil shock at the time. So when he shot it, he thought it was just an AEG.
Yeah.
And yeah, the smile on his face, he just lit right up. And it's kind of how I feel about mine. When you play with it in CQB, it's amazing. It's really, really good fun. Anyway, I'm giving away all the review now, so I'll leave that for now.
well, my current opinion is it's a really awesome replica of a 9mm submachine gun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's
with all of that, with all the other stuff that a 9mm submachine gun in the real world has.
It's not as I don't want to get into it either.
Don't need any more, but that's
no. There are certainly other platforms that are easier and quicker to reload and to use, but if you love MP5s, then yeah, this is one of the ones to look at.
Yeah.
Until TM release a gas blowback.
So, my perspective, I've got some C2R stuff over here. I'm very lucky to have it. A couple of reviews are going live 10 a.m. tomorrow, and I think their website's going to launch as well, which I think a lot of people.
Yeah, their website launches tomorrow. I don't know what time, but yeah, looking forward to that. I might even buy some stuff myself if I can.
If you do, check my reviews out first. So yeah, so that's what I've got going on, and I've got 3, 4, 5 of those coming out over the next few days. So I've been pretty busy. Right, Dan, let's finish up. So thanks to you again. Really great talking to you. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Thanks to everyone in the chat and.